Today I'm going to go over 4 tools, and in those 4 tools I'm going to also give some theory and some structure underneath. But these are the 4 main concepts I want you to understand. One is going to be the transactional model of communication, and that is a complex piece all by itself. You'll see that shortly. The second is understanding what a communication channel is and know which one is best. If you don't know what I mean by that right now, you will by the end of this presentation. Third, understand conflict. And I'm going to define it very simply and give you a model to see it, understand it, and dissect it for yourself very quickly with as little noise as possible to narrow in on what is the salient issue that I can or cannot address. Fourth, the ABCs of emotion. Some people call this, some places refer to this as the cognitive behavioral therapy model. Some people call it the rational model. So once we get to the end of the presentation, I want you to have a good understanding what these 4 tools are and feel confident that you can hold them in your head and use them, because that's how they have the most benefit. So the method I'm going to give you is, again, I'm going to point out some natural laboratories all around you. So every time you're walking around and you remember some of these communication tips, you can go, hey, wait a minute, I can observe that right here. And I can decide for myself, from my own collection of empirical data, what I think of this, how effective it is, where to use it and when not to, how well it's working for me. Feel free, please, to keep the tools that work for you and reject the ones that don't. It's not about making yourself into Superman when you're actually Aquaman. It's about finding what works for you and then maximizing that. So in thinking of that abstraction, let me give you some of the 5 basic models. One is children. And the other part of that can be old people suffering from mental illness. Another great laboratory, driving your car in traffic. Also ordering food in a sit-down restaurant and fast food, 2 separate things. And if you have a wife or a partner, a life partner, anyone you spend a lot of time having conversations and they have various degrees of levels of intimacy at any time, that's another laboratory, but that one you are personally involved in, that one you want to make the investment in because of the payoff. We're going to start with what I described in the teaser about today's session. Your client is screaming in your face, and you've got to talk to them because it's your job. And you can't just say, I'm not taking this. Though I will point out, as a communication person, it is perfectly appropriate to say to someone, especially a business person on the phone, I'm a professional. This is not an appropriate form of communication. When you've calmed down, I'll be willing to work on this problem. This is very important to me. But it sounds like we need a little time. Call me back when you have time. Thank you. And hang up. Do not be shy about defending yourself or holding a boundary. That's fair, that's valid, that's part of communicating too, and being clear. You haven't refused communication, but you've refused to allow yourself just to be abused by someone who is too emotional to stop themselves from doing it. Perfectly okay. So, as you're dealing with a client, what's fun is these are all interpersonal communication skills, and we're going to apply them in business, but you'll see the broader implications. So in business, we take out a few of the dimensions, some of the wiggle room. In our interpersonal relationships, most of them are voluntary. The business relationship, I've got a contract. And that changes a lot of things. So the number one thing it changes is the client's expectations of me. I'm supposed to deliver, I'm supposed to be on time, I'm supposed to be answerable. They feel entitled. And that feeling of entitlement can abstract very quickly into shitting on you and you're terrible and nothing is right. The human mind does this. It's not something that's evil, it's not something that's mean. We naturally abstract things. One of the first things the mind abstracts is pain. We learn to avoid it. And we learn when our tummy feels kind of painful, we learn to eat and we feel better. The human mind says, oh, well, when I have physical pain, I eat and I feel better. What do you think you learn to do? When you have emotional pain, you eat and you feel better. That's where that comes from. That's an abstraction. And it was totally unconscious. And it takes sitting down and going, wait a minute, why am I doing that? That's why that happened. And you have to start rolling that back. This is a point where I like to insert that I'm going to talk to you. I slow myself down. Cynthia's a good friend who knows I can talk very fast in presentations. I'm going to try and get around 80 to 100 words a minute. But humans can get up to 200 words a minute in speaking, and the human mind up to 2,000 words a minute. So even at a calm rate of 1,000 words and me at 100 words, I'm competing, I'm only 10% of all the messages in your head, even right now. That's how the mind abstracts. And saying that out loud, you gotta go, that makes a little sense, but is it that big? That's how the mind will abstract things without even talking to you about it. No permission, no projects, no statement of work. It's just, oh yeah, we're gonna do that now. And you find these reactions showing up. So in the environment we're talking about, think about the human mind. The brain physiology involved, to start with, come on in, the lizard brain. And then on top of that, we built a mammalian brain. And at the very front of that, we built a human brain. And these three areas of the brain correspond to an instinctive center, an emotional center, and a cognitive center. That cognitive center is the one that develops last. It's not even fully cooked until you're 28 years old. That emotional center, it doesn't start really taking off till you're about 12 years old. Adolescence, that's why it's so much fun. Because each side of the brain is now trying to communicate with the other in new ways. That's when you observe children changing from simple behavior, focusing on adults telling them what to do, to focusing on each other. Everything is terribly important. Well, Susie's got the latest such and such doll. I have to have one too. You didn't care about that a week ago. The brain is doing different things now. The human mind, the brain, which holds the mind, is the environment we're operating in for communications. So that verbal criticism we were talking about, the anger criticism cycle, as a client with that obligated relationship, I've got to pick up the phone and go, oh man, I'm late on that delivery. I know what this phone call is going to be about. It's not going to be good. I'm going to get spanked a little bit. I don't want to take this call. Do you see how much internal communication is already happening before I've even picked up that phone? I pick up the phone and I listen, and I'm going to talk to the client. And the client's going to tell me all these things that are wrong or why they're unhappy. That's criticism. It can be constructive criticism. It's important criticism. I got to please the client. That's valid. But the neurology is still there. And it's going to hit your nervous system in one of two ways. It's going to confront either your personal self-image or your public self-image. Personally, I'm someone who's very responsible. I'm always on time. I get my work done. This person on the phone is telling me all about how I'm late. I'm irresponsible. I'm not getting things done. How that attacks me personally. That's not attacking me personally. That's my own internal monologue grabbing it and making it about me. And that's the thing we naturally all do. And that's the point where you can catch it. I'll get back to that in a moment. Or it confronts my public image that I'm on time. I may in fact be terribly late, but I want my boss to think I'm always on time. So I work very hard at that. I may be the world's biggest slob, but I make sure at home, but at work, I am Mr. Neat. Because that's my public image. If some piece of information or data confronts personal image or public image, we feel conflict, we will often respond with anger. So do clients. And that's kind of where they are on the phone. Here's how you get out of it. Here's that person. One, you got to control yourself. You got to control the internal environment. So before you pick up that phone, you know it's not going to be a call you like. If you need to, let it go to voicemail. Call back. Get yourself in the right space. In the right space is going to be, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to listen. I'm going to facilitate the client giving me information and facilitate this process to get through it. So now I'm ready to be calm, and I want to listen calmly. There are 4 responses to verbal criticism and anger. I can just walk away, withdraw. Lose, nobody wins. Very common response is rationalization. Well, that was okay because blah, blah, blah. You know who likes that? That's teenagers, love that. When they come home and mom says, you can't do that. That's not appropriate. And the teenager says, but everybody at school is doing it. Rationalization. The teenager said, I'm not listening to you. And they rationalized it and told you why they don't have to hear what it is. And why what you just told them attacks their public image or personal image, and they don't have to assimilate that information. Everyone else is doing it. You can counterattack, not productive, or you can listen calmly. When you're working with a client, number 4 is the only path through. If you want to be a troublesome teenager, you can deal with number 2. But that also illustrates another thing we're going to come back to. So remember that. After you're able to be calm, let them get out what they get out. Remember, as part of that brain physiology is going to be left brain, right brain. And it's this left brain that has the language stuff in it. And it's this right brain that has the emotional stuff in it. And once we get emotional, you can't think. And it starts having trouble connecting to the language part. So you start saying anything, first thing out of your mouth, "You're the worst person ever!" Where did that come from? 20 minutes later, I don't mean that. I know I don't mean that. But in that second, oh, I knew I meant that. Because that excited right brain and the amygdala have taken over. And the instinctive center, the human part, is not functioning. And it didn't ask your permission, didn't tell you I'm taking a break. It just happened. And that's why we wind up in these educations and in these corners all the time. So, listen calmly and understand you're dealing with some brain hacks. And when that client starts to talk to you, they may become emotional. As they become emotional, they will become more emotional. It will become harder to endure the onslaught of everything that's critical. Just be calm. Remember, most important thing, it is not about you. They are expressing what is wrong from their point of view of the world. And all you need to do is accept it, write it down, and they're giving you the information you need. This is what they think. This is what they think is right and wrong. To address their problem, that's what I have to address. Don't make it about yourself. You get anxious in that moment. And that anxiousness starts to make you feel angry about, man, why do I have to deal with this? This person is being rude needlessly. They can't control themselves. Now you're having feelings about your feelings. And they're about you. More noise. Much, much harder now to get through the communication process. Your ego has showed up and inserted itself, said, now we're going to make this about me. Now you're not talking about the problem, you're not fixing it, you've gone off to the races. So listen calmly, keep yourself out of it, get the whole list. There are 2 steps, this is important. The first one is, of those 4, listen. The second one, agree with the truth. Once this person's had the cathartic moment of saying, here's the list of everything that's wrong, and I expect you to do something about this. What they want, what they need, is you to say, we're on it. I heard all those things. I heard you say this, and this are problems. And I know resources I can put on that, and that. That one I'll have to get back to you on. We're going to work that out. They want confidence. They want to hear that you've heard them sincerely, not just being placated or blown off. And that then gives them the confidence to calm down and start working with you to solve the problem. But you've got to get through the first 2 steps first. Now you've got them off the edge of that cliff. They're no longer screaming and foaming in the mouth in your face. And you can start making progress on, let me get to the real problems and get past some of the ranted problems. It's like on Tuesdays you're always late. That's not really relative to my SOW here. I understand it's a complaint, but can I get to something I can really do something about that's actually important about it? All those things will show up and you got to sort them out. After someone runs for a while, even when they're emotional, they can run out of energy. So when someone is ranting and you don't feel the need that I can facilitate this problem by letting them go, let it get complete, let them calm down, and then I can move the problem forward. You've made the choice not to say, this is not a professional conversation, coming back later. But you're going to stick with it. They'll eventually calm down. And then you can start working the problem. You want to show sincere respect. People hate to be manipulated and sold. If they get the impression that you're just shining them on, you're going to make this problem worse. You'll take all the good work you've done of keeping your emotions under control and your responses under control, and you have to start back at the beginning. As this happens, keep in mind, willpower fatigue, yours. You are keeping your emotions in check as they are being attacked through your sympathetic nervous system that also doesn't ask permission, is just operating and keeps deflecting those criticisms to say, it's not about me, it's not about me, it's not about me. But that saps willpower, that saps energy. And that's going to take a toll. You need to recharge. I'll get to that too. Any questions so far? All right, thank you. So we've got them off the cliff. And now we're going to look at, it's business, sure, but business has a relationship component, an interpersonal component. There's the contract, and I can, if the relationship breaks down, I'm forced to just use the contract to define our relationship and to operate our relationship. And sometimes that throws me into a court proceeding or someone else to adjudicate these are the roles and responsibilities, that what's owed here and what's owed here. Because we can't work it out interpersonally anymore. That is an assumption people make. Oh, it's business, so it has to be objective. No. You're going to run into moody people having a bad day, people who have lost their own willpower fatigue at any particular moment, and it's going to be all over the place. So managing relationship is part of it. You want the relationship to grow, not to decay. And this is one of the things I was talking about was in the very beginning. You want to win just a little bit. Think of it like playing a poker game. At every interaction, win a chip. Because here's what I can tell you, I know is an absolute fact. The longer you communicate, especially with someone new, especially with a client with whom you don't have a great deal of background, and with whom you've got expectations going back and forth, it's not a question of if you will have a miscommunication, just when. It's going to happen. And it may be something small, and it may be something big. But it's going to happen. And you want to be prepared for it ahead of time. How do you do that? By earning some stock that they can take that hit against before damaging you. This is another one of the things Dr. Hanna explained to me as an undergraduate and it just blew my mind. He called this an idiosyncrasy account, and you have it with your friends and your family and in business. And that idiosyncrasy account means, I know my friend tells bad jokes, but he's an accepted friend, and I'll just sort of grin and bear it. Because next week he's going to buy a ticket to the football game, and I'll put his stock back up a little bit. So there's an ebb and flow. And the same is true of you. Now with friends and family, that account can get pretty high. It'll get down to 0, and then you're operating on credit. Friends and family will give you a lot of credit. Business partners will not, because they don't have time. If you go on a first date, you're not going to have a lot of credit. So just want to give you rich examples to see where you see these things in your lives. So in terms of a relational scale, listen for the language. Look at your teams at work. Look at yourself. Are you going from criticism to defensiveness to stonewalling to contempt? Think of your own internal discussion, your internal monologue. The most common thing is you go into a development shop and you've got front-end, back-end guys, your designers, and your themers, and they're like, man, this job would be so much easier if it weren't for those dang clients. They don't do anything. How many times do you hear that? That's contempt. That can be, as long as you keep those guys away from the client, you may not have a problem. And yes, there's a question of the esprit de corps, the culture of your team, which you want to be high, and you want to be good, you want to be fun. But at the expense of your client, it's going to have a cost. Because sooner or later, that culture from your team will creep out to the next team and the next team. And your organization is going to have these teams, and one person, at least one person, is going to be the account manager. The account manager has to be the client's friend all the time and cannot participate in, man, clients are so lame. So now, you started with us versus them inside the organization, outside the organization, and it has now moved inside the organization. Who's next? I guarantee it's the project manager, who also has to be the client's friend, who's dealing with developers going, man, these clients are so stupid. Yes, they don't know what we know because they don't do this every day the way we do, which is a point to recognize and not complain about and say, that means I need to slow down and make room for the unknown. In situations where there are unknowns, you have to over-communicate to get rid of what is ambiguous, to even surface what is ambiguous in the first place, because it may not be known. You're both talking and may not realize you think you understand each other, you don't. So these are in order. You'll go from, it gets increasing in this direction, down to contempt, and increasing in this direction. The growth comes from a model from romance. Showing admiration for your partner, responding to cues. Usually that's your partner reaching out to touch your hand or hold hands at the movies or leaning in for a kiss. The business equivalent of that, it's, I don't know. But thinking of it in terms of how responsive you are. When you get an email, some clients are going to be very, write you once an hour. Some write you once a week. Be responsive. That's what you want to do. And know the client, how they see the world. At my company, now that I'm there, and it's funny, I made the mistake when I was in an agency, we still get proposals that makes it incredibly obvious You don't know what we do. You haven't even read our website. Like, oh, we can help you with e-commerce. We don't do that. Not at all. No, but you're a health plan. Yeah, we're a Medicare, Medicaid health plan. We don't collect premiums. We don't sign up members. They're signed up for us and nobody pays a thing. So know the client and remember to use their vocabulary, what's important to them as you're talking to them. Give them that. And that's how you win that little chip. One little penny at a time. Grab them every chance you get. Make it very important with every transaction. As you go up and down your emotional hierarchy in relation to another thing or another person, again, in order. Improving, declining. Notice what we had. Acknowledgement, intellectual, appreciation, emotional, embracement, physical. Cognitive center, emotional center, physical. Instinctive center. Same three parts of the brain. Same three things. The client up here that has embraced you viscerally, you cannot stop them from talking about everyone they run across, about how wonderful and great you are. They will waylay people on the street and say, you have got to hire them right now. And this person is going to post negative, hateful things about you on Twitter and Yelp every day for the next year. When you get to this position, it's impossible to negotiate. That physical, visceral hate, human brain is off. How do you walk the person back from the cliff there? This is where it pays off to have that practice of sincerity. If you tell someone something that you appreciate about them, and not saying it in a way that says, oh, your hair looks nice today. No. You say, I like that color on you, it looks great. And you smile. It's impossible to viscerally reject that. So someone who's down here, if you can find one thing that you have in common that you both like, you say, well, we can't agree on anything, but I do like that shirt. It gets them off the bottom. You can't stay there when someone has given you at least one thing that you can appreciate about it. Like, well, they can't be all bad, they like my shirt. Yeah, I'm gonna give them a break. That's how you get off the bottom. When you see the client doing this to you, that's how you get off the bottom. Then you have to make an evaluation of whether or not this is a healthy or toxic client, and that's a different presentation. Keep that in mind. This is a very simple, easy rescue, and just like the demonstration I gave you, try it. Just it's as simple as smiling at a stranger on the sidewalk when you walk down the street. It's almost impossible for them not to smile back.
I think the entire campus is really, really happy about the presentation.
I love it. This is great. And West Virginia showed up too. So
Wow, you have
I got bears and huskies.
Vital support of your presentation.
Love it. So in that hierarchy of emotion and where you are in generating things for conversation, showing appreciation, showing gratitude, that's sincere, giving acknowledgement, agree to the truth. When the client says, you were late, don't say, well, yeah, but we were almost there. That's now rationalizing and equivocating. Say, yes, we were late. Agree to the truth. Yeah, that's true. Yes, it cuts you off in traffic.
I'll text you right now.
Then there's 3 magic words that will help any conversation. Tell me more. Seriously. Give someone a pause. Make yourself pause and know that I'm seriously asking this question. I'm going to say, tell me more, and I'm going to wait and I'm going to listen. And sometimes you have to do it a couple of times, 2 or 3 seconds. If you go to the sales seminars, they'll tell you, I want to hear tell me more 2 or 3 times because I'm going to get an objection and objection and objection that are just a habit. They're not real. So I don't have to overcome those. I'm going to ignore them as if they weren't even stated. By the time I get to the 3rd or 4th objection, now I've surfaced something is real. That's why I keep asking, tell me more. And I can uncover, unpack more of what's going on. This will be more powerful in a moment. 3 important communication principles. These again from Dr. Hanna, and everything else that I'm describing that he taught is derived from these 3 theories. Number 1, the onus is on you as the speaker to make sure people understand what you want, what you mean. Because no one else knows what they don't know, especially if it's in your head. I'm thinking even number, tell me what it is. No one knows. It's up to me. It's my responsibility to make sure you know what I'm thinking and to check in to see if you got it correctly. When you can't communicate, stop. If the rule number 1 is true, that means it's my responsibility to make up the distance, the gap, between my communication skills and yours. Rule number 2 says, it's okay to recognize that gap is too big to bridge. if I only speak Spanish and you only speak English, the best we're going to be able to do is some body language communication. I want to eat something or drink something, I'm cold, and hope that can get it. Usually it can, but very limited communication. We're not going to be able to design a website together. Number 3, understanding these rules does not guarantee you will get what you want. It only guarantees that you will get clarity about what's happening, and that lets you make better decisions about, again, is this a toxic client or an okay client? Where do I see myself in relationship to this? Is this an okay thing to move forward with? You get clarity. Or how do I move forward with this? Which is basically the same question. So all of that finally brings me to hack number 1, which is the communication transaction. And this has got all the noise that I was describing. When you think of, again, that environment that we're communicating in, it's ourselves. And we started off as infants and we grew to what we are now. But as infants, I was not born speaking language, but I certainly was born speaking. Thinking. All of you were. Every infant you can observe, you could tell there's something going on in that head. And it's trying very hard to learn how to communicate it from here to there. That's it. That's the communication model. How do I get what's here over there accurately? Problem is, first thing I have to do as an infant, I have to learn the code. How to say things. English, Japanese, Spanish, whatever language I'm learning, that's the code. For us, we also have specific vocabulary and web development. So here's a spot where noise can creep in. I may have the wrong code, or I may have it slightly wrong, or my use of a particular word may be more local than yours. And as a result, we won't have the same meaning. So that's the first spot for noise. The second one is, now I'm going to use that code, I'm going to communicate it through a channel. I'm going to speak, I'm going to call, I'm going to type an email. And there's a second form of noise. You're mentioning the bands outside. We're here in this environment, and me speaking to you has this competitive noise, making it hard to hear. Now we're going to get to you. You're going to decode it. That's where that other part of that noise comes in. That word being the same thing to you as it does to me. And it's going to make an image in your mind. So this is where it gets very interesting. You start to understand interpersonal communication. Meaning is negotiated between two people. That's why you go back and forth a bit. What do you mean by that? You'll talk about the same thing 2 or 3 times in two or three different ways. So that you have that meaning negotiated. And you say, yeah, do I understand you? Is it like this? Tell that back to me. Yeah, it's like that. You've got it. We do understand each other. We're ready to go forward. This feedback loop is very important. And it's something you can use. You can give feedback, email or otherwise, or body language if someone's talking to you. If you hit that cognitive dissonant thing that goes, what was that? Make a face. Exaggerate it. You want it to be seen. You're communicating back to the speaker. I didn't understand what you just said. And they'll read that feedback again. The mind, 2,000 words a minute, it's going to process it and start making adjustments. You'll feel it. Lots of places for noise. These two things, these two circles, that's your field of experience. Some people call it a perceptual frame. It filters the entire world as data comes into you and tells you which data is about you and which data is not. When you need to shrink your ego, it's because your ego is telling you everything is about you. This can cause problems. So yeah, you got to shrink that sometimes. But that's how you can remove yourself from the conflict and you realize that person isn't talking about me. They're talking about their own feelings, what's going on in their mind, their body, from their point of view, what the world looks like from there. All I have to do is listen. By not making it about me, I avoid the conflict. Those two fields of experience, when we look at UX and design, we'll take surveys, especially here at universities. We ask the students, tell us everything you would like on the website. And we ask the administration, tell us everything you'd like on the website. And what do you see when you take those Venn diagrams? The only thing that overlaps is name of school. This overlap tells you how rich your communication can be or how poor it will be, because there's just not enough in common. You need to get those things aligned. And in your most personal, intimate relationship, over time, that's exactly what you're doing. They become much, much more in line. Again, the models, the abstraction, other people's kids, your own kids, fast food, restaurants. Look at the overlap, look at the field of view, how are you reacting? What does this explain? Think of the feedback happening. Think of the messaging going back and forth. What does it explain? What can you observe? Any questions? All right. So that's the common frame of reference. The book Flatland has a wonderful short synopsis in the TV show Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And is anyone not familiar with Flatland? A few people. Okay, so it's a fictional construct that says, imagine a world which is 2 dimensions, not 3. And then all of a sudden, you as an extra dimensional being come along and say, I'm going to educate 2-dimensional world and say, oh, come look at this. Nice 2-dimensional piece of paper. This is up. Isn't this interesting? And I'll put you back. And as I put you back, you go, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And your friends say, where did you come from? I said, well, I've just been to up. And they go, what's that? It doesn't exist for them. It's not in their conceptual frame. You'll never be able to explain it. They've never seen up. Never been there. It's a little 3-minute explanation on YouTube. I highly recommend it for understanding how it explains overlapping perceptual frames and when you can't communicate. Let's see, if I were to ask you guys, this is my favorite trick question, how much of the communication process, how much of the meaning is in the words? Just give me a number. Mario, any number, 1 to 100% of the meaning of my conversation is in my words alone.
50%.
I got 50%.
20.
I got 20.
10.
We got a 10.
Yeah, about 25.
Mario, 25.
60.
60. Rob's a rigger.
10.
10. Would this surprise you guys?
Actually, I was totally nervous about it.
There's a caveat here. This piece of information has been disseminated for 40 years wrong. And I've been part of that until I did some more research and realized I was doing it wrong. This research said in 62 and 68, they were looking at people conveying conversations about their feelings and emotions, not about everything in the world. Because if this model were true, body language 55%. I could walk into any building in here, I can cover up my ears, can't hear a word you're saying, but from your body language alone, I'm going to get at least half of the physics and engineering lecture. Then I'm going to understand it. Who believes that?
Yeah.
So where this is important is 2 reasons. One, it shows you that the channel you choose to communicate with can be richer or poorer. If I'm just talking on the phone, it's just the tone, it's just the words and the tone. If it's just email, it's just the words. But physically, in person, you get the body language, which helps convey that sincerity I've continued to talk about. You can tell some insincere body language. It also is important in that you want to see, and you want to give, and you want to observe consistency between someone's verbal messages, their body language, and their tone. So when you come home and you see your spouse in the kitchen and they're crying and you say, what's wrong? Nothing. How many of you believe that? Are these things consistent? When they're not consistent, you do not have to have a cognitive moment to say, wow, that was not consistent. I think they're doing something. You get it. You get it instantly. And that throws dissonance and noise into a conversation. Part of you feels like, I'm not sure if I can trust this client, or whatever it is, something. And that's what's happening. So be aware of that. Be aware of when you see communication breaking down, enrich the quality of the environment, of the channel through which you're communicating. Let's move on. There was a third bite I
What's
had.
the correct chart for this? What's the correct chart for this? Or we just throw it all away?
It is the correct chart, but it's not for all communication.
Okay.
So best communication this is a chart indicating the channel. So your best communication is in person. But that's part of business and part of doing international business is I can open up a FaceTime and do business with someone halfway around the planet. Not a problem. That's the modern world. And I get all of the almost in person that way. But also business demands that we be quick. We fire off quick emails and we use chat. And that means, let's see, how many developers do we have in the room real quick? Good. You know what an interactive bug is? If I write a piece of code, you write a piece of code, you write a piece of code, you write a piece of code, and we check them, and they're all good. Nothing wrong with them. Then we put them all in the same CMS, and they don't play well together. It's very hard to find that. but everyone has done the right thing. At the intersection of it produces a problem. This is what you're going to have. So the modern business driving us this way without stopping to think about it is going to force those intersections. They're going to come out. This is exactly how this stuff happens all the time, which is where I started going, we need to have a conversation about these are real easy to avoid. You can see them coming. Let me move along before the band tries to come up here. Expectations model of conflict. This is my favorite. The conflict section is very, very short, very simple. The model for conflict is when your expectations of reality don't match reality for some reason. And this is where I like to mention driving your car as a laboratory. And think about it. When you're mad because your expectations haven't been met, why? What happened? The person in front of you, or the person who just moved in front of you, did something you didn't expect. They violated your expected pattern of traffic. They came to the left lane with the right blinker on. They turned right across 3 lanes. Something against the rules that you generally agree to. From time to time, you're forced to do that as a driver just to get where you're going, and someone else is going to be dealing with you. But again, no personal attachment. You don't even know this person. So these events will trigger you. You can see, how do I feel? Why do I feel that way? What's happening? And there's no person for whom you have to go back and say, I'm really mad at you, or you're in trouble. That doesn't exist. It's gone. It's very ephemeral, which makes it a very easy laboratory. And it's so common. You can see it all over the place. The same thing will happen with a waiter at your restaurant. Waiter comes by and takes your order, comes back, says, here's your order, and we were out of cheeseburgers, so I brought you a fish sandwich. Thanks, bye. You're going to be mad. That waiter did not manage your expectations. That waiter knew when they put your order in, the kitchen told them, we're out of that, you better go back and tell them. If they had come to you the first second they knew they could not meet your expectations, it's very easy to manage. I mean, most of you probably have had a waiter come back and say, we're out of something, you gotta change your order, and won't even remember how many times or where. Because when they do it right away, it's not a big deal. I was already looking at the menu when I picked that. I had a second choice in mind. But if they wait until it's time to eat and everybody else has their food and you don't, of course you're going to have a conflict. So when expectations and reality meet each other, there's no conflict. When reality exceeds our expectations, there's no conflict. When it's below, that gap defines the conflict. So manage the gap. When you see it, speak to it, call it out immediately. Don't go, oh man, this is going to hurt. Yes, it's going to hurt. Agree to the truth. We said this wasn't going to happen, and it did. Now that it's here, it's on the table, I need to move forward with a solution. Get emotions out of it. So that conflict will have one of 6 faces. Now there are other sets of this that have 8 faces, and there are other names for these 6, but these are the 6 I knew, and they run: happy, sad, mad, afraid, ashamed, confused. And the theory says that every emotion you can name will fall into one of these 6 categories primarily. It's only a question of degree and degree of difference. And that get this, every human, every ape, every primate on the planet makes these faces in correspondence to those emotions, which is why you get it when someone goes, huh, at you while you're speaking. There's no cognitive process involved. That wiring in your brain goes back that far, that primitively. So now you can look at the problem. Do I have to solve the problem for a happy person? No. Sad person, depending on the nature of the sad, tell me what you're sad about, I can address it. Mad about, once you calm down, tell me what you're mad about, I can address it. Tell me what you're afraid about. I might be able to address that. Some fears are irrational. Ashamed, probably usually not a business conversation. Confused, that's when you're going to need to address a lot. In fact, elicit. Here's another dirty little secret about emotions. We tend to speak to our most powerful and intense emotion, but not all of them. We'll have more than one at once. Here's children again in this laboratory. Consider the feeling, I'm going to watch your time, feeling of the energy of these things, the flow. If I'm happy, that's just, it's up, it's expressive. The energy just comes out of me. If I'm sad, I'm depressed, I get small, it flows in. If I'm mad, that comes out. If I'm afraid, that comes in. If I'm ashamed, I'm scared of the world, judging me. That comes in. If I'm confused, that comes in. So 4 out of 6 is an inward flow of energy, of feeling. So imagine a child with no emotional control, no emotional maturity. They're starting to have a meltdown down and throw a complete fit. And you ask, what are you mad about? There's nothing they're mad about. They've been overwhelmed by a combination of 2 or 3 other emotive states, and can't stop themselves. That's why children are a wonderful laboratory to watch, and you can watch them change and grow. Fact number 4, people say you can't change your emotions. You can, or you can at least mitigate or moderate them. This is the ABCs of emotions. There's some activating event, independent variable. Some belief, that ego, that relates that to you, that tells you why you're now offended or upset. C, that causes that offense or upset. How do you manage this? D, you learn to discount irrational thoughts, irrational beliefs. That's a self-talk. I should be perfect. Discount that. I should always look great. Discount that. This is what comes up when you have the conversation finally with your spouse who says, I feel upset when I see you flirting with other people at the party because I care about you and it makes me feel, isolated. Tell me more. I'm afraid. I'm ashamed. I'm confused. You've brought it back out. But it shows up. There's the ABCs. The thing to address is the belief. When the teenager is trying to negotiate with the mom, but everyone's doing it, what's he attacking? Her belief that this is appropriate or not. He says, well, everyone else is doing this. Your beliefs are out of date. It's a classic thing you hear from teenagers. So this is the noise in the process. Half of it is in our own head. The other half is in theirs. Being aware that it's there is the best way to get around it and manage it. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.